The future is not just happening. The future is built by us, by a powerful community as you here in this room.
Davos divided. Tonight, a cage match between Henry Kissinger and gorgeous George Soros. While we get to pay $5 for a gallon of gasoline, Vladi the Body says he wants us to pay $5 billion to him once a month. Senator Rand Paul blasts the lunatics of Davos, while this guy wants to track the food you eat and where you eat it. Finally, banishing God from public schools. How's that working out so far?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I am Michael Matt, and this is the Remnant Underground. Before we get to it tonight, I want to remind you, the Remnant, hot off the press once again. Remember, we come out every 2 weeks, so if you are not subscribed to this paper, you wouldn't know what's in this one. And it's really important. That's the Remnant newspaper, the underground newspaper. They can't touch it. They can't monitor. It's fantastic. So consider clicking the link below to subscribe to that. Big news this week out of Switzerland, Davos. There was this massive cage match featuring gorgeous George Soros versus handsome Harry Kissinger. Yes, Henry Kissinger is still alive. It's absolutely incredible. I don't know what he's eating, but I'd like to find out because there's some serious longevity there. Now, gorgeous George Soros, was beating the World War III drums, as you can imagine. And horror of all horrors, George is warning now that if Russia isn't quickly defeated over in Ukraine, the West will not be able to address climate change in time to save the civilization. Here's George.
Fighting pandemics and climate change, avoiding nuclear war, maintaining global institutions have had to take a backseat to that struggle. That's why I say our civilization may not survive.
Handsome Henry Kissinger, he says just the opposite now. He says that Ukraine needs to give up its territory to Russia, at least part of the territory that Russia wants, or this ridiculous tilt with Joe Biden pouring billions of dollars into it could actually turn into World War III. Here's Henry Kissinger.
Ideally, the dividing line should return to the status quo ante. I believe pursuing the war beyond that point would turn it into a war not about the freedom of Ukraine, but into a war against Russia itself.
And of course, refereeing this little cage match is Vladi the Body, who says he wants to keep fighting to the death so long as you pay for it.
We need up to $7 billion in financial support each month to make up for economic losses, and we will need hundreds of billions of dollars to rebuild all this later and recover from this war.
Yeah, being the political scientist that he is, he disagrees with Henry Kissinger.
Mr. Zelensky compared Kissinger's views to the appeasement of the Third Reich back in 1938, saying, and I quote, "In the real year, 1938, when Mr. Kissinger's family was fleeing Nazi Germany, he was 15 years old."
And I have the feeling now that old Henry Kissinger won't be doing any skiing in Davos next year.
I respect Henry Kissinger, but I appreciate that he's not holding any official position in the U.S. administration. He has his own opinion, but we strongly disagree with it, and this is not something that we're going to do.
These lunatics probably couldn't even build a treehouse together, but we're supposed to give up our national sovereignty so that they can build the world back better. Right. By the way, the usual cheerleaders at Davos didn't quite show up for this WEF wrestling riot, I guess we could call it. Emmanuel Macron from France wasn't there. Old big Boris Johnson, he took a pass. Xi Jinping was a no-show. Little Greta, how dare you, boycotted. Good for Greta. Bono still hasn't found what he's looking for, so he wasn't invited. And I guess everybody at Davos pretty much forgot about the little ferret this time because he wasn't there either, which was kind of surprising. I'm not sure exactly what it means, but I suspect the Field Marshal Schwab, I think his message is just a little bit 2020 for us now, for the folks, who are paying $5 a gallon for gas now and desperately trying to find baby formula for their kids. Davos is beginning to seem a little out of touch. We're talking about the real people, the people in the real world who aren't too terribly interested in listening to a bunch of old farts flying their private jets to Davos and then telling the rest of us to plant trees as a carbon offset. They're basically looking at us and going, I know you can't find baby formula, but suck it up. Buy a Tesla, man. It's only $100,000 or so, and you're going to save the planet.
So I'm going to throw this immediately out to the audience and say, how many of you are driving an electric vehicle at the moment? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Nobody cares. Not enough electric cars on the road. Nobody cares, even at Davos, to get one of these deals. I mean, I think that the electric cars are going to be fun, but I can't wait to see what happens when you try those out here in Minnesota on a 20 below zero January morning. And I wonder where it goes from here. I mean, can you imagine if they try this with aircraft, which they're going to, I guess, have to get around to? Imagine taking your seat in your plane across, over to Europe or something. The captain comes on. Good evening, folks from the flight deck. Tonight we're flying one of those new electric planes, hoping the battery holds out over the North Atlantic. And by the way, I'm fully vaccinated and the angina seems to have subsided. So sit back and relax and have a good flight. But hey, if you crash the plane, if you crash with one of your new electric planes, the Lunatics, according to what we just learned over the WEF, they're going to know just exactly how to find you floating along in the ocean.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker.
So all that crazy is going on over in Davos, and meanwhile we got shootings, more school shootings. What is this, like the fourth in a couple of years now? It's just getting worse and worse.
19 innocent children and 2 teachers senselessly killed at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas.
These are some of their faces right here. The children ranged in age from 10 to as young as 8. Tonight, their families face the sobering reality that life without them will never be the same.
I just want my baby home. I don't care. I don't care about anything else. I don't care about nothing.
And of course, Joe Biden, his solution is to exploit the tragedy of kids shooting kids. Here's Joe.
As a nation, we have to ask, when in God's name are we going to stand up to the gun lobby? When in God's name we do what we all know in our gut needs to be done?
Does anybody want to talk about really why the kids are killing each other? I think we should. Don't you? Don't you think the big kids in the room should have a conversation about this before it just gets completely out of control? It's almost there already. Because here's the thing. I'm one of those guys that grew up with guns all my life. You know what? Every kid I knew had a gun. In fact, every kid in the Midwest, America, 50 years ago, grew up around guns. But nobody was shooting up their classmates. Nobody was indiscriminately blasting away at a convenience store. Why not? You think you should ask that question, maybe? Because the guns were literally everywhere. I mean, your dad just brought you, he took you up to Herb's at the Hardware Hank to buy you your first .22 rifle, maybe gave you a gun safety class, and away you went. You had a gun all your life. We all did. What's changed? The guns? Please. Back in my day, a .44 Magnum could blow a human being into next week. So please, don't tell me about your little AR, because if you think that's a huge difference, you don't know anything about guns. Yeah, it's faster, yeah, it fires more. That's not the point. Why do they walk into the classroom or into the store in the first place and start shooting? Who cares what style gun they have? What, if you kill 5 people, let's use the 6-shooter. Bam, 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 bam. You shoot 6. Kill 6. That's okay. But you bring your assault weapon and you shoot more? That's bad? This is such ridiculous, kindergarten, illogical, crazy going on now. Because we got to ask, if it's not the guns, what else has changed, friends? It's an easy conversation to have. And again, even the most conservative Republican politicians prattling on and on and on about mental health. Okay, fine, I'll buy that. We got some mental health problems. Have you seen these kids? Multicolored hair, everything's pierced, vacant eyes, plugged ears, plugged everything. They're completely cut. Yeah, we have some mental health problems, but that doesn't get to the question. Why are all the kids going nuts? Why weren't the kids suffering from all this mental health disease when somebody my age was a kid? Back, by the way, when we all had dads, and we went to church every Sunday. We knew which bathroom to use. I wasn't shooting anybody. Why not? And what's going on then in these public school classrooms? Can we ask that? Is that okay? Or is that racist? What's going on in there where these educators have access, unfettered access to the kids for 7 hours a day, 5 days a week? What's going on in there? I think maybe we should look at that, don't you? I think maybe being disconnected from reality also has something to do with all of this craziness, the video games and everything else. These kids are totally addicted. They're online constantly, just like Bill Gates wants them to be, constantly online, constantly shooting everybody. I think maybe these kids are starting to struggle with reality, the difference between virtual reality and the real world they hardly ever see anymore. Do you think maybe? We've got to answer these questions because these lunatics over in Davos, they want to hook your kids up to the screens all day, every day, for the rest of their lives.
We must be ambitious. The time for incremental change and growth of digital access is over. We must highlight the critical nature of this challenge as foundational to so many others. And we have to bring those who care about education, health, climate, equality and growth to also be the champions in our mission to bring connectivity to all.
I just had another school shooting. Maybe you saw pictures. The kids are getting sick of the world that you're creating, Mr. Professor Field Marshal Schwab. They're getting sick of it. So are we. They're getting sick of each other. They're getting sick of themselves. For heaven's sakes, what is it going to take? Studies now show that adolescents accounted for a larger share of all suicides in 2020 than they did the previous 5 years. Kids are killing themselves. They're drugging themselves to death. Over 107,000 people died of drug overdose last year. Remember when we kept hearing that big number, 700,000 dead of COVID? Okay, fine, that's terrible. But guess what? What about the 100,000+ people, young people, who died of overdose? Locked away, masked up, and now shut up. Nice job, Klaus.
Since the onset of the corona crisis, internet usage has increased by 70%. The use of communication apps has increased by 300%, and virtual collaboration tools by 600%. And some video streaming services have grown 20-fold. This is only true for those who are connected to the internet.
There was an explosion of mental illness over the course of COVID. And yet the lunatics of Davos, the ones that locked down the kids in the first place, they're back for more.
The future is not just happening. The future is built by us, by a powerful community as you here in this room.
And now, if that wasn't enough, now they're going to let the WHO, what's that guy's name? Dr. Ted. Dr. Ted is going to be in charge. Dr. Ted, the WHO, not an elected official, obviously, none of them are, but they're going to let these clowns decide for how long in the future now the kids will be locked down and out of school the next time a pandemic comes along.
Not only do they want to track you for your carbon footprint, the WHO has announced, they're forming a treaty, and it's going to be this treaty for the next pandemic. But in the next pandemic, it's not going to be a Washington-based mandate on vaccines or a Washington-based social distancing or masks. It's going to be an international one, and they actually want to track everybody with a QRS code.
So this ought to be fun. Mandated globalist WHO lockdowns, coupled with social media addiction, millions and millions of kids addicted to the social media, Everything's sprinkled then, especially for the kids, with Adderall, with Ritalin, and legalize pot, because they're working on that right now too. Yep, the shooter in Texas, this poor kid, he's a pothead. And cannabis causes psychosis, as you know, which causes violence. But you know what we need to do? We need to legalize the pot and ban the gun. That's what we need to do. That'll fix the problem. The President of the United States says so.
As president, I'll work to decriminalize marijuana and automatically expunge prior marijuana convictions.
Well, let's just cut to the chase. Because the reason everybody from Davos to DC to the swamp to the United Nations wants to ban firearms, it's the same reason that Joe Biden's handlers in Davos want to ban your car, your automobile, and chauffeur everybody around in a global fleet of smart Ubers in smart cities. They're serious. We've showed the clips of that. They actually want all cars to be gone. They want autonomous Ubers to take us everywhere we want to go. And do you know what that means? We're even more enslaved. That's what they want. That's what all this is about. And here's how it works. But before I even say that, I want to make it clear. I believe in a Second Amendment. I told you, I've had guns all my life. I've been hunting all my life. I believe in a Second Amendment. I believe in the right to bear arms. But not because I think anymore that we can somehow stop the government, the tyrannical government anymore. And I understand that was the original intent of the Second Amendment, but things have changed. And these days, if the government, they're here to help. They're either here to help or take you out. If they decide to take you out, you won't even see it coming.
Just like any mobile device these days, it has cameras and sensors, and just like your phones and social media apps, it does facial recognition. Inside here is 3 grams of shaped explosive. This is how it works. Did you see that? That little bang is enough to penetrate the skull and destroy the contents.
That looks like fun. What do you think, Walter? You think we can pick those off with an AR or a side-by-side shotgun?
I think we got that.
I think no problem. Yeah, just keep scanning the horizon for the little mini drone. Boom. It's like shooting skeet. Now, I get it. That video that we just showed you, that's a 2017 dramatization. But it was screened. Guess where it was screened? It was screened in 2017 at the United Nations Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons. It was a meeting held in Geneva.
A $25 million order now buys this. Enough to kill half a city. The bad half.
And it has a sequel. And the sequel is called Slaughterbots, If Humans Kill. The sequel came out in 2021. Guess what it did? It called on the UN to ban these autonomous weapons that target people. You see what these folks are talking about when they say that the biggest threat to humanity is AI? It's going to be a lot of fun, friends. You see what I'm getting at? If the government wants to take you down, they will. And you won't see it coming. So, the million-dollar question, why are they so worried about our guns? Do you know why? Because this, friends, is another psyop. Now, pay attention, because this is important. They want us to be wholly dependent on them for everything. So follow this now. They want us dependent on them from running up to the store in your car to pick up a stick of butter for your wife, all the way over to stopping bad guys from invading your homes and hurting your children in the middle of the night. You won't have any control over that anymore. They want us to go to sleep, in other words, every night knowing that we have no ability whatsoever to defend our children from whatever comes through the door. Do you understand the emasculization that's going on? The brain control, the mind control that's going on here? Removing from every man and woman the very idea, the very possibility that they might have a chance to defend hearth and home. You know what that does to a people, to a populace, to a civilization? That's what this is about. We will own nothing. He's exactly right. When Klaus Schwab said, we will own nothing, exactly. But we are going to purchase everything. They want to sell us services where we used to own something, now they're going to sell us a service, like your Amazon account or your Microsoft account or whatever. You used to buy the programs, now you buy the services, right? You do the online service, you subscribe to Microsoft Word or Office or whatever. That's the vision for the whole world, for everything that you will ever need. You'll purchase every service you need from Big Brother in this future they keep talking. That's what the Great Reset is all about. Ending possessions, private property, and starting a world of dependency on the services Big Brother provides. This is not a conspiracy theory, friends. If you think it is, you simply haven't been paying attention, even this week, to what they're saying in Davos. And if you object politically to what's going on, well, just look to the north of the border. Look what the little ferret did to the truckers. You see, if you object to what's going on, Big Brother then will have the ability to cut you off. He will cut off every one of those services that he provided for you. From food to transportation, to home protection, self-defense. That's his job now, not yours. And of course, as we've said so many times, no matter what happens in the future, the bad guys aren't going to be paying attention to Klaus Schwab reimagining a world without guns. They're not paying attention to that moron. The bad guys are always going to be there because they're bad guys, which means by definition, they will always break what? The law. And the black market will always be wide open to them. So in the future, friends, the bad guys will have all the guns. The police will be defunded. You will be unarmed, disarmed. And a groovy little electric car of yours, that'll be disabled by satellite.
Below a certain speed, hackers can even control the Jeep's steering. They can adjust the locks and disable the brakes. Many automakers now produce vehicles that function like smartphones on wheels, but that convenience also allows hackers to now engage in wireless carjacking.
Welcome to the Great Reset. You see how serious this is? Do you see why? And I always say I do not have any interest on this show trotting this stuff out to freak you out or to scare you. This does not have to happen. This is not a future that will happen, but it sure is as hell is a future that they want to happen. It sure is a future that might very well happen if we don't wake up. And ultimately, friends, this is the thing. Nobody wants to talk about. Ironic that horrific Biden is sitting there reading his prompter. For God's sake, get rid of the guns, for God's sake. He brings God in for this because he's a blasphemer. This Catholic. But remember your Bible, because that's what's really at the problem here with these school shootings. Remember your Bible. Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. The life. And this is a war on him, which means this is a war on life itself. And that's why these people who are so Christophobic are also creating a massive globalist culture of death. From abortion on to the school shootings to everything else, the suicides, the drugs flowing over the southern border because Joe Biden doesn't give a rip about any of us. He only cares about his globalist friends and the Great Reset. So why are the kids killing themselves? I'll tell you why. You already know. The kids are killing themselves because they have nothing to live for anymore. The kids are killing themselves because they don't know why they're even here anymore. And it's against the law to tell them why they're here in classrooms. These classrooms are hateful, godless, horrific little sexual abusing laboratories of chaos and revolution against everything good and holy and beautiful. In those classrooms, you don't get to tell the children why we're on this earth. What do you think's going to happen to kids from broken homes and kids who are hooked on drugs and kids who are so confused and so messed up? They're going to act out. These shootings are happening because the family is destroyed. And the lunatics who run the asylum right now, they're trying to destroy what's left of it. Here's Al Gore at the World Economic Forum just praising the fact that we now have destroyed marriage.
5 years ago, just to pick one example, if somebody had told me that in the year 2018, marriage equality would be the law of the land in all 50 U.S. states, and gay marriage would be not only accepted but honored and celebrated by 2/3 of the American people, I would have said, well, I hope so, but what are you smoking? But it happened because that long struggle reached a point where it was resolved into a choice between what's right and what's wrong.
So anyway, it's just absolutely no wonder that the kids don't even know what they're doing anymore. In classrooms, they're being told they might be a boy, they might be a girl. That's why this not only sexual but psychological abuse of children matters, because they're producing these little wrecks. I don't blame that little kid down in Texas who took his guns and did what he did. He's only half there. He's been destroyed. In every way, mentally, psychologically, spiritually destroyed. Most of these kids don't even have fathers anymore.
Lil Yummy was an 11-year-old murderer.
Wow.
And you look at his picture, you'll see the headshot of him, and he's like this. And he got murdered at 11 by a 14-year-old.
Wow.
Who's doing life now, and a 16-year-old.
That makes no sense.
You blame the system? Where was his father? It starts in the house. It starts in the home.
Their mothers were encouraged to kill their own siblings, these kids, to kill their siblings in the womb. They grew up with death, and regardless of what Team Biden says, this has an effect. This destroys children. They grew up knowing that mom killed the most innocent person in their lives. That's one of the first things they realized. And you wonder why they're taking their revenge on everybody else? They have no respect for human life or human dignity? You really seriously wonder why? Even Hollywood, every now and then, it comes along and admits what happens to children, what happens to women who go through this procedure, who actually terminate their own child.
My life before the Camino, I was married. I was married and I was pregnant. My first, my only. But my husband was not a kind man, so I terminated. I got rid of my baby girl, Tom. Sometimes I hear her voice, my baby. And it sounds crazy because she never got to take her first breath, but I imagine what she would have sounded like. And sometimes I hear her, Tom. Sometimes I swear I can hear her.
Sorry about you, babe.
And meanwhile, friends, as we say to conclude this program so often, because I don't know how else you look at what's happening and come up with something that not only targets the problem, but will fix it. And that's the spiritual dimension that nobody talks about. I don't know. I don't understand. Even all this week, there was some great programming on Fox News in the evening talking about this thing and really making great points, excellent points. I agreed with them all the way through. Tucker Carlson even said Biden is clearly unfit to lead this country. Absolutely agree. But for whatever reason, the G word is never mentioned. God. Because remember how this started? Do you remember what had to come out of the schools before the guns went in and they started shooting, the kids started shooting kids? First thing that had to happen, they had to get God out. Remember? I remember this when I was a little kid. Madeline Murray O'Hara fighting to make even the mention of God illegal in public schools, right? That's where it started, friends. Until we go back and look at that, we're not going to solve this problem. So what do we do in the meantime while we're dodging bullets in the classroom? We're forced to homeschool our kids, drive 50 miles to go to Mass on Sunday because the Catholic Church is in total shambles. It's in ruins. What do we do? You know the answer to this, but we have to do it. We have to get serious about going back and reclaiming everything that they took away in order to build this demonic new order. We got to go back and reclaim our religion, our faith, our Bible, our law, our King. Everything they took away to create this hell on earth. And I'll give you an example because it's important. And as I said before, it's not just those of us who are going to be blessed to be able to make this trip. We're going back to France, 10,000 of us. And you're with us. Every one of you watching this thing, you know you're with us. We're going to do this together in spirit or physically. We're going to field An army of 10,000 traditional Catholics are going to travel not to Davos, but to France, to what's left of Catholic France next week to put these lunatics on notice. We are done with your godless, globalist crap. That, my friends, is the answer. Davos is not the answer. Davos is having a little powwow. That's not the answer. The answer is what you just saw. The answer is to find our knees again, to find God again, to find the Mother of God again, to unite the clans and go back to sanity and law and order of Jesus Christ. If you want to stop the chaos, you have to stand with Jesus Christ. No, really, I'm not talking about some sort of pious platitude. You have to become Christian. You have to publicly stand with Christ at every opportunity. Encourage others to do the same. Encourage them, all of us together, united. Tell Mr. Biden and Pope Francis and Mr. Schwab, for God's sake, leave the children alone. Stop abusing them. Stop brainwashing kids. Stop ignoring their fatherless state as though a broken family doesn't matter. Stop killing their unborn siblings. Stop destroying their countries. Stop blaspheming their God. Do that, and we'll never see another school shooting again. Fail to do that, and the fires of hell will burn this world up long before climate change ever gets the chance.